In 1993, Art Davey was sitting at home, going through television programs, when he came across an action video series produced by the Gracie family of Brazil. It featured martial artists from different disciplines facing each other in no-holds-barred combat to determine the best martial art. The excitement and adrenaline rush that Davey felt while viewing the fights had him hooked, because, in the months to come, he drafted a business plan, gathered investors, and formed WOW Promotions with an intent to bring the tournament to the US as a television franchise. WOW partnered with SEG, an up-and-coming pay-per-view television producer, as the other known producers, such as HBO or Showtime, wouldn't even entertain their idea. SEG was also the one that came up with the name Ultimate Fighting Champion. The next part was marketing the product to the consumers. This proved to be a difficult hurdle to navigate, as even though WOW knew they had an audience, it was difficult to explain the product to them. MMA was a completely foreign term back then, and the idea of a no-rules fight seemed a bit far-fetched. Everyone thought that it was another scripted wrestling tournament, trying to pull one over on the gullible public. In all fairness, would you believe it if someone told you there was a program that was televising fights with no rules or judges, allowing complete violence and brutality, and that it was actually legal? You wouldn't. Even future UFC Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock was skeptical as to what he was actually participating in. But a minute into the first fight threw all the doubts out the window. What people didn't know was that SEG had found a loophole. They had cleverly chosen a sports arena in Colorado for holding the tournament, which had no athletic commission. Hence, no governing body to stop them. In the first fight, Taylor Tooley lost his balance and fell down. As he was trying to get back up, his opponent, karate star Gerard Gordeau, sent a right kick to his face, shooting one of Tooley's teeth into the crowd. There was an air of silence for 2 seconds as people processed what had happened. After that, everyone went nuts. Gerard had, with a single kick, launched both Tooley's teeth and an MMA revolution. UFC continued its journey due to lax laws, but was attracting a lot of negative attention and political pressure due to its violent nature. In 1995, WOW Promotions sold its stake in UFC to SEG, just before the event took a complete U-turn. In 1996, Senator John McCain, a supposed boxing fan, saw a UFC tape and was astonished by the brutality it presented. McCain went on a crusade against MMA and was successful in getting UFC banned in 36 states, and also being dropped by major pay-per-view distributors. The ban forced UFC to increase its cooperation with athletic commissions, and SEG kept redesigning the tournament rules to make the event more acceptable. However, UFC's ban in 2/3 of the US, along with its decline in pay-per-view sales, forced SEG to the edge of bankruptcy by 2000. This was when Dana White, along with the Fertitta brothers, made their move. At the time, Dana White was managing UFC fighters, and the Fertitta brothers were in the casino business. The common ground they shared was MMA. Both were huge MMA fans and went to many of UFC's events. When Dana learned that SEG was at the edge of bankruptcy, he convinced the Fertitta brothers to invest in it. After a month of negotiation, UFC was ultimately sold for $2 million to the newly created parent company, ZUFFA LLC. Dana White was named the president of the company and was tasked with the job of turning the event around. And boom! 20 years later, the company is now worth $10 billion. Obviously, it wasn't that easy. To turn around the company, White needed to address 3 major problems. Step 1, get UFC legalized. Step 2, bury other MMA promotion events. Step 3, and the most important one, gain fans. Going through all 3 steps was a lengthy and difficult process, and at one point, the Fertitta brothers even considered selling the business at a $30 million loss. This is the story of how Dana White turned UFC around and made it a more mainstream event. Step 1. Legalizing UFC. Ever since its inception, UFC has always attracted negative attention. They faced constant political pressure, and they addressed it by going to places where the government couldn't reach them. After 3 years of cat and mouse, the government had had enough. This led to the 1996 ban and the downfall of UFC. SEG only saw the fights as an event. They sold it on its brutality and violence, but never saw it as a sport. All this was changed as soon as Dana White took over. The first thing that Dana worked on was making the UFC legal. And what could make the process easier than rich partners who run casinos? Lorenzo Fertitta had ties with the Nevada Athletic Commission and secured sanctioning in Nevada in 2001. Also in 2001, the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board adopted a set of standards that would be known as the Unified Rules of Mixed Martial Arts. This was a huge step forward because for the first time in MMA's history, there was an agreed-upon set of comprehensive rules that state regulatory bodies could use to sanction the sport. UFC soon returned to pay-per-view TV, and even Senator John McCain, who originally proposed the ban on UFC, gave his seal of approval. Step 2. Bury other MMA promotion events. Seeing the success of UFC, many other companies had started their own MMA events. Strikeforce, Pride, and Elite XC were a few of them. And to end all of them, Dana White cooked up a master strategy. He did absolutely nothing. This was because he knew the hard truth of the MMA business. To be successful, you have to be the best. I mean, if you were an MMA fan and you had the option between paying to watch the events provided by the best MMA promoter and the second best MMA promoter, why would you even consider going for the second best one? Dana White banked on making UFC the best MMA event and waited as the rest of his competition went bankrupt. As they kept going down, Dana White would buy those that had potential and acquire what little audience they had. Step 3. Gain fans. Let's say I told you there was going to be a soccer match between two pro teams and asked you whether you would be interested in watching it. You would probably say no. But what if I told you that it was going to be a match between Manchester United and PSG, showing the clash between two of the biggest names in football, Messi and Ronaldo? That would probably pique your interest. Let's say you watch the match. Now suddenly you are in awe of Messi's performance. You start to read more about him, watch more videos, and follow his journey. You start to learn more about Barcelona FC, their famous El Clasico matches against Real Madrid, and before long you are hooked onto the sport. When people form connections with the sport, they are motivated to follow it and eventually become fans. Even though there are other weapons, stories are the most potent weapon in creating connections. Stories do not refer specifically to tales or sagas, but whatever a company communicates to its audience. And all that the early UFC events had communicated was brutality and violence. Though this was appealing to a really niche audience, it was never going to help UFC become a mainstream event, attracting millions of fans. By 2004, the Fertitta brothers were about $30 million in the hole. The company was growing, but certainly not at the rate they were expecting it to. In one of their last-ditch efforts, they partnered with Spike TV and paid them $10 million to create a reality TV show called The Ultimate Fighter. The series showed the journey of 16 fighters, living, training, and competing in the same house for the grand prize of a contract to fight in the UFC. It showed the story behind each fighter, their lives, and their dreams. It gave the audience something they could connect with and showed that MMA wasn't just about violence. As more episodes kept rolling out, the viewers kept growing, and by the 5th episode, the show had 2.1 million viewers. The TV show was provided on free-to-watch cable channels, which created the perfect sales funnel for UFC. Viewers who wanted to continue following their favorite fighter had to convert to pay-per-view customers. With the new increased visibility, UFC's numbers exploded. The company broke the all-time pay-per-view records in 2007 and never looked back. As of 2021, MMA is the world's largest growing sport, with UFC at the heart of the industry.